Hey guys, Boris Hassel, BK Forex. Welcome to the commodity dollar update for Aussie dollar, dollar CAD, Kiwi dollar for SEP 25 to SEP 29 2017. And the comp dollars are actually a very big story this week on a whole bunch of front levels. We have monetary decision data, we have political data, we have a little bit of economic data out of CAD, and generally it's in a very, very sort of a tense standoff between carry trade flows, risk aversion flows, and U.S. dollar flows. So there's, I think, kind of a lot of interesting sub stories to calm dollars. Very much worth watching from all angles. Let's take a look at the levels first, and then we'll take a look at the event risk. So odd still remains 81.79 trade basically, and the 79 end of it is the key support here, in my opinion. So I'd be watching it very carefully to the downside break, because if it does push to the downside, I think it has further to go. And especially odd to Kiwi is an interesting trade, which we'll discuss in the crosses section. Dollar CAD, very interesting here. So dollar CAD made this big run towards the 120, bounced back off. We've been anticipating better than expected economic data. Data has actually been sort of mixed. The Bank of Canada has been much more reluctant to be as hawkish as they were before. They even talked the dollar down. 24 was a big resist point, which we talked about on the charts, and I'll show you again. We've bounced off of that, but we break that to the upside, the whole dollar CAD strength story really starts to wither away. So very much worth watching it this week. If 24 goes to the upside, I think dollar CAD has much more upside to go, where Loonie is going to correct further. Kiwi is going to be the star of the show from every angle this week. Starting out, obviously, Monday to you guys, Sunday to us, is the results of the New Zealand election. Did the Nationals win? All of that information is going to be very valuable. I mean, the question is, how much did they win? Did the center-right win by a big amount? If there's any sort of a surprise, that's certainly going to be a huge hit. But anything positive, it's already been factored into the Kiwi, but it's supportive. It's still going to be supportive. The bigger question, though, in terms of a Kiwi, is will the RBNZ be supportive? And we'll talk about that in just 1 second as far as event risk goes. But for now, if you sort of assume 72.50 now is the new support, higher level of support. 74.50 is the big resist point towards the very, very large resist at the 75 level. So let's take a look at the event risk, and we see that we have, first of all, even prior to the RBNZ, we have trade balance data, which is going to be important for Kiwi. Now remember, Kiwi trade balance data can be moved by one single big item, so it's a very volatile little piece. We're actually bearish this particular piece of data, so we'll see how that plays out. There's nothing on the Australian side at all this week. Wednesday or Thursday to you guys, we get the RBNZ cash rate. Now, nobody expects them to move. Everybody expects them to stay 175. But the critical question is, will they say that conditions require perhaps tightening in the future, or are they going to remain as dovish as they possibly can? That's going to be the really critical thing. The Kiwi itself has not risen up so much that it worries them. I think at 75 or above, they're definitely going to get concerned. But at the same time, conditions in New Zealand have really improved. Prices for milk have risen up. We'll have to see how they view monetary policy within light of all of the stuff that's going on, especially also because of the big housing bubble in Auckland. So it'll be interesting to see how they address those issues and whether they remain either modestly hawkish or uniformly dovish, which they've been for a very long time. And then end of the week, the focus turns to Canada, and we have the Canadian GDP data, which will be interesting because, and here we're bullish actually, Canadian GDP data, because both trade balance, retail sales were strong, and we think there's a chance to beat to the upside. That could be positive, Canada, but again, if that latest Canadian data has been kind of a disappointment, so if the GDP growth is slower than expected, then I think that 124 level really can go by the wayside. So those are the key things. It's really front of the week, and especially New Zealand, they'll be the primary focus this week, which is relatively unusual. Let's take a look at the charts here, just see how the COM dollars shape up. So here's Aussie, first of all, and we see Aussie really, showing a much stronger hesitation. It's clearly the 81 was a. As a matter of fact, let me just go to the weekly and just show you how strong this 81. See, this goes all the way back to the 2015 level. That's a big topping formation. We certainly got rejected off the 81 big time. And if you look at the weeklies, it was a big reversal candle. The only sort of saving grace on the weekly charts, and let me just go a little bit higher here, is that we didn't quite close on the lows, right? So we did bounce off the lows. We went 79.08, and we actually closed 79.55. So that was a pretty serious bounce that may suggest that it's a near-term bottoming out formation. But we revisit 79, I think it crashes through 79. So there's a bias here to the downside in Aussie. Aussie is a relative weakness trade, in my opinion, because Lowe came out and basically said we're never going to raise rates for the near term, even if conditions look okay. We're going to stay neutral. So it put him essentially in a very, very dovish camp. If RBNZ mimics him, then maybe there'll be parity between Aussie and Kiwi this week. But if RBNZ sounds just tiny bit dovish, tiny bit hawkish, than Lowe, it really puts Aussie into a disadvantage towards the Kiwi. Now let's take a look at Kiwi here. Kiwi had a good big bounce. This is a weekly chart, so we saw a bounce a couple of weeks ago off the 72s. The only thing that was interesting about Kiwi is that we reached for the 74s and it came off of it pretty strongly, but still relatively decent trade here. This 73.50 clearly a pretty decent resistance. The whole 73.50-75 corridor is a pretty decent resistance for Kiwi. And of course, a super bullish move by Kiwi would be if we went above the last week's high of 74.33. If we go above there, then the target towards the 75 really comes into play as a trade. Still looks relatively bullish to me, but we'll have to see how the event risk plays out this week. And then here's dollar CAD. And dollar CAD, this is a weekly chart. I was talking about the fact that let me just go to the daily chart actually, just to give you a better granularity on this whole thing. So you see how the 124 was a resist point. We kind of bounced back off it, but here's the interesting point. We really did not go back below 122. And as long as we stay above 122, I think the pressure on dollar CAD is to the upside, and we could easily move our way back through 24 up to 25, 26 region, especially if the market feels that the Canadian data begins to slow down as a result of the strengthening of the loonie, which obviously is going to weigh a little bit on that trade data. Oil has been supportive for loonie, but if we get this sort of a double combination of oil coming off the highs, U.S. yields remaining at these levels are improving, and the pressure on the Kiwi to go, pressure on the Caddy to go higher. I think the next move through the 24s could be much more seminal, and the trade to the upside here pretty much exists. So that's how the COM dollars shape up. They're basically sort of front of the week focus on Kiwi, end of the week focus on Caddy. And in the middle of all of this is establishing the fact that Aussie remains the relative weakness trade. Will it stay this way for the rest of the week? Wish you guys the best of luck, the best trading. Boris Schlossberg, over now.